I found my son Marcus and his wife Sarah in my study at 2 a.m., photographing my financial documents with their phones. The green banker's lamp cast shadows across their faces as they whispered about power of attorney forms. 35 years I'd raised that boy, watched him become a doctor, celebrated when he married his lawyer wife. Now here they stood documenting my assets, like vultures circling prey. I stayed hidden behind the door, my hand trembling not from age, but from the betrayal cutting through my heart. My name is Brice Henderson, and at 68 years old, I thought I'd seen enough of life to avoid its sharpest surprises. After 40 years as an aerospace engineer, designing guidance systems for satellites that now orbit our Earth, I'd retired to the home Martha and I built together in Westport, Connecticut. The house sits on 2 acres of pristine land, with views of Long Island Sound that still take my breath away every morning. The real estate market has been kind to us, and our property is now valued at $3.2 million. Martha passed 3 years ago, taken by pancreatic cancer, in just 4 months. Those final weeks, she held my hand with surprising strength for someone so diminished by disease. "Promise me something, Brice," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of medical equipment. "Watch for the wolves. They come when you're vulnerable, when you're alone. Sometimes they wear familiar faces." I thought she meant strangers, con artists who prey on elderly widowers. I installed a security system, got caller ID, shredded credit card offers. I never imagined the wolves would share my last name. Marcus had always been our golden child. Valedictorian in high school, summa cum laude at Yale, then Johns Hopkins for medical school. He specialized in cardiology and built a thriving practice in Stanford. His wife Sarah came from similar success, a corporate lawyer who'd made partner at 32. When they visited for Martha's funeral, they'd been pillars of support, handling arrangements I was too grief-stricken to manage. The monthly visits started 6 months after Martha's passing. "Just checking on you, Dad," Marcus would say, his physician's instincts seemingly focused on my well-being. Sarah would bring homemade casseroles, though I later realized they were store-bought with transferred containers. They'd stay for dinner, ask about my health, my routine, my finances. 3 weeks ago, the conversation shifted. We were eating pasta primavera on the deck, watching sailboats drift across the Sound, when Sarah mentioned how her firm had helped several clients transition to senior living communities. "The places today are like resorts," she said, twirling her fork with practiced casual movement. "Golf courses, gourmet dining, medical staff on site. Some of my clients say they wished they'd moved sooner." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "The cardiac care at these facilities is outstanding, Dad. Regular monitoring, immediate response if anything happens. At your age, living alone in this big house, anything could occur. At my age, I was younger than Robert De Niro when he had his latest child, healthier than most 50-year-olds, still swimming 40 laps every morning in the pool Martha had insisted we install. But I simply smiled and changed the subject to the Yankees' chances this season. 2 weeks ago, the observations became more pointed. Marcus arrived for dinner 20 minutes late, claiming he'd gotten lost. "Sorry, Dad. You gave me confusing directions. Said to turn at the blue house, but it's been green for 3 years now." I hadn't given him directions. He'd been driving to this house for 15 years. But when I pointed this out, he exchanged a meaningful glance with Sarah, who pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. "We all forget things," Sarah said gently. "It's natural. Marcus sometimes can't find his car keys." But Marcus's expression suggested this was different, concerning worth documenting. "Last week I was reaching for a book on the top shelf of my library when a legal pad fell from between 2 volumes. Sarah's distinctive handwriting filled the page. Cognitive evaluation checklist, memory lapses, confusion with familiar tasks, personality changes, financial irregularities, document everything." My blood chilled, but not as much as when I read the final note. "Contact Dr. Philip Brennan, recompetency evaluation, retainer paid." I replaced the pad carefully, my aerospace training and precision serving me well. That evening, I started paying closer attention. I noticed how they'd arrive separately parked, where they could see my garage check if both cars were there. Sarah would excuse herself to use the bathroom, but detour through other rooms. Marcus would offer to help with dishes, but spend time examining my mail on the kitchen counter. They'd begun talking to neighbors too. Mrs. Patterson from next door mentioned that Sarah had stopped by, concerned about whether I'd noticed any changes in dear Mr. Henderson. Tom Bradley from across the street said Marcus had asked if I'd been maintaining the property properly, if I'd seemed confused or forgotten our poker night. I hadn't forgotten. I'd canceled because I detected this pattern emerging and needed time to think. The morning before I discovered them in my study, I was trimming the hedges when I heard Marcus on his cell phone in the driveway. He thought the sound of my electric trimmer would mask his conversation. "The neuropsychological evaluation is crucial," he said. "My colleague at Stanford, Dr. Brennan, he's prepared to testify if needed. We just need documented incidents. No, Sarah's already consulted with the elder law specialists at her firm. The timeline depends on how cooperative he is. If we can get him to sign voluntarily, we avoid the whole competency hearing circus." I kept trimming each cut precise and measured while my son planned my institutional imprisonment. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my home, touching Martha's collection of Waterford crystal, running my fingers along the banister we'd stripped, and restored ourselves looking at photographs of Marcus's first steps in the living room. At 2 a.m., I heard the front door open. They had keys, of course. I'd given them keys after Martha died for emergencies. This wasn't the emergency I'd envisioned. I slipped behind the study door as they entered, watching through the crack as they photographed my will, my investment statements, the deed to the house. Sarah held her phone's flashlight, while Marcus captured every detail. "The Bermuda account, too," she whispered. "We need everything for the asset assessment." My son, the healer, who'd taken an oath to do no harm, methodically documented my life's accumulation while plotting my dispossession. They worked with surgical efficiency, replacing each document exactly as found. As they prepared to leave, Marcus paused at my desk, looking at the photo of him and Martha at his medical school graduation. "It's for his own good," he said quietly. "And ours," Sarah replied, her voice carrying no pretense of altruism. "Henderson Technologies patents alone are worth 8 figures. Your gambling debts won't pay themselves." Gambling debts. My son, the brilliant cardiologist, trapped by something as mundane as addiction. I remained frozen until I heard their cars disappear into the Connecticut night, then sank into my desk chair, staring at the same photo Marcus had observed. Martha smiled back at me from that captured moment of pride and joy. "Watch for the wolves," she'd warned. "They come when you're vulnerable, when you're alone. Sometimes they wear familiar faces." The last part proved the most prescient. The wolves hadn't just arrived. They'd been circling for months, and I'd been too lost in grief and trust to notice their hunger. But now, I was awake. Now I understood. And now I would prepare. The next morning arrived with typical New England fog rolling off the Sound, shrouding my property in gray mist that seemed appropriate for my mood. I shuffled into the kitchen at 7:30, later than my usual 6 a.m. swim and breakfast routine. When I opened the cabinet for my coffee mug, I deliberately reached for Martha's favorite, then paused, frowned, and took my backup mug instead. "Morning, Dad." Marcus's voice startled me, though I'd heard his car pull up 5 minutes earlier. He stood in the doorway between the kitchen and mudroom, studying me with clinical attention. "Marcus, what brings you by so early?" I fumbled with the coffee maker, pressing the wrong button twice before finding the brew setting. Sarah had an early deposition in the city. Thought I'd stop by for breakfast. His eyes tracked my movements as I opened 3 cabinets before locating the coffee filters that had lived in the same spot for 20 years. "Filters are in the pantry now," I mumbled. "Or did I move them? Martha used to handle the morning coffee." That was a lie, wrapped in truth. Martha had handled morning coffee, but I'd been making my own for 3 years without incident. I watched my son's reflection in the kitchen window as he typed rapidly on his phone. We sat at the breakfast table sharing scrambled eggs I deliberately oversalted. Marcus pretended not to notice while documenting my confusion about seasoning. I asked him twice about his work, feigning forgetfulness about his previous answer. Each repetition deepened the concern in his eyes and quickened his fingers on his phone. After he left, I drove to the law offices of Harold Whitman, my attorney for 30 years, and poker buddy for 20. Harold's office occupied the third floor of a converted Victorian in downtown Westport, all dark wood and leather-bound volumes that spoke of tradition and discretion. "Brice, you look troubled," Harold said, gesturing me to the chair across from his mahogany desk. At 75, Harold still possessed the sharp intellect that had made him Connecticut's premier estate attorney. "I need to understand something." I began then, laid out what I discovered. Harold's expression darkened with each revelation. "Adult guardianship proceedings," he said, finally removing his wire-rimmed glasses to clean them. "If Marcus and Sarah can convince a court you're incompetent, they'd gain control of your assets, your medical decisions, essentially, your life." "What would they need to prove?" Harold pulled out a legal pad, sketching the process. "Medical testimony is crucial. They'd need a psychiatrist or neurologist to evaluate you, testify about cognitive decline. They'd present evidence of confusion, memory loss, inability to manage finances or daily activities. Character witnesses help people who've observed concerning behavior. And if they succeed, you'd be placed under guardianship. They'd choose your living situation, control your money, make your medical decisions. You'd need court permission to challenge any choice they make." Harold's voice carried 40 years of legal experience. "It's designed to protect vulnerable adults, but like any system, it can be abused." "They mentioned a Dr. Brennan at Stanford." Harold's eyebrows rose. "Philip Brennan. He's testified in dozens of competency cases. Never met a potential guardian he didn't support. His favorite phrase is, 'lacking capacity for informed decision-making.' Very persuasive to judges who don't understand the elderly, can be sharp as tacks, while still misplacing their reading glasses." I left Harold's office with recommendations for 3 independent psychiatrists and the name of someone who could help me understand exactly what my son and daughter-in-law had planned. Jennifer Watson operated from a small office above a coffee shop, her private investigation firm announced only by a discreet brass plaque. "FBI retired," she said, offering a firm handshake. Jennifer appeared to be in her early 50s, with silver streaking her auburn hair and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing. 20 years in financial crimes before I went private. Harold Whitman says you need help." I explained my situation while she took notes in precise shorthand. "Can you find out about these gambling debts?" Sarah mentioned. "Give me 48 hours, Jennifer replied. "I'll need access to your property for security measures, permission to investigate your son and daughter-in-law's backgrounds, and a retainer." I wrote the check without hesitation. Whatever it takes to understand what's happening. 2 days later, Jennifer arrived at my house with a manila folder and a grim expression. We sat in my study, the same room where I'd discovered the late-night photographers. "Your son has a problem." She began spreading photographs across my desk. These were taken at an underground poker game in Chinatown. High-stakes, dangerous people. According to my sources, he's down approximately $400,000 to the Zhao family organization. The photos showed Marcus at a poker table, his face haggard with desperation as he pushed chips forward. My brilliant son, who could diagnose complex cardiac conditions, couldn't diagnose his own addiction. "It started 3 years ago," Jennifer continued. "Right after your wife's death. Maybe grief, maybe the pressure of success. He began with legal games in Atlantic City, escalated to private games, then these underground operations. He's been borrowing from hospital colleagues, maxing out credit cards. Sarah discovered it 6 months ago, when their joint account was overdrawn. And Sarah's situation?" Jennifer pulled out more documents. Her law firm, Brennan Kowalski and Associates, is facing a $30 million malpractice suit. They advised a client on a merger that violated antitrust laws. The firm's insurance won't cover it all. Partners are expected to contribute personal assets to the settlement. Sarah needs $2 million to maintain her partnership, or she's out. The picture crystallized with brutal clarity. My son and his wife didn't just want my money. They needed it desperately. "There's more," Jennifer said. "I've found emails between Sarah and a client named David Chen. He's a tech billionaire, made his fortune in artificial intelligence. He wants your property for a private research facility. Sarah's promised him first option to buy once they have control." She showed me printed emails, Sarah's promises of a quick, quiet sale, her assurances that her father-in-law would be relocated appropriately once the paperwork was complete. "They've scheduled a competency hearing," Jennifer revealed. 2 weeks from now. They haven't notified you because they plan to argue you're too impaired to understand the proceedings. Dr. Brennan will testify along with neighbors they've been cultivating. They have a facility picked out Shady Acres in Danbury. I knew Shady Acres. Despite its pastoral name, it was a bare minimum care facility where residents were warehoused rather than treated. I pulled up their website on my computer, noting violations for understaffing and neglect. "Can you help me fight this?" Jennifer smiled for the first time since arriving. "Mr. Henderson, I've taken down corrupt CEOs and mob lawyers. Your son and daughter-in-law are amateurs playing a dangerous game. Yes, I can help. But we'll need to be smarter than they are." That evening, I sat alone at my dining table pushing food around my plate without appetite. The grandfather clock Martha had inherited from her mother chimed 8 times, each note echoing through the empty house. I thought about Marcus at 5 years old, convinced monsters lived under his bed. I'd given him a flashlight, taught him to check for himself, to face his fears with illumination rather than hiding under covers. Now my son had become the monster under my bed, and I would need more than a flashlight to reveal his true nature. I would need patience planning, and the kind of strategic thinking that had helped me guide satellites through the cosmos. The landline rang, startling me from my reverie. Marcus's number appeared on the caller ID. "Dad, just checking if you remembered to take your evening medications." I hadn't been prescribed evening medications in 5 years. "Did I forget again? Which ones am I supposed to take?" "The blue pills, Dad, in the medicine cabinet, for your blood pressure." His voice carried false concern wrapped in satisfaction. I walked to the bathroom, phone in hand, and found a new prescription bottle I'd never seen before. The label bore my name, and Dr. Brennan's information filled just yesterday at a pharmacy I'd never visited. "Found them," I said. "Should I take 2? "Just 1, Dad, like always." I palmed the pill, pretended to swallow it with loud gulping sounds. "Taken. Thank you for reminding me." "That's what family's for," Marcus replied. "Sweet dreams, Dad." After hanging up, I examined the pill under my magnifying glass. Small, blue, innocuous looking. I sealed it in a plastic bag, then called Jennifer. "Can you have this analyzed?" I asked when she answered. "Drop it in your mailbox tonight. I'll retrieve it, have results by morning." I spent the rest of the evening documenting everything in a journal, creating my own evidence trail. Martha's photo watched from the mantel, as I wrote her knowing smile, seeming to approve of my newfound vigilance. The wolves had made their first real move, introducing chemicals into my environment to create the confusion they needed to document. But I was no longer the grieving widower stumbling through fog. I was an engineer who'd spent decades solving complex problems, and this was just another system to analyze, understand, and ultimately overcome. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh deceptions from the 2 people who should have protected me. But tonight, I had clarity. Tonight, I had allies. Tonight, I began to fight back. Jennifer arrived at 7 a.m. sharp with coffee and devastating information. The pill analysis had returned overnight, courtesy of a contact at a private lab. Lorazepam mixed with diphenhydramine. She announced, setting the report on my kitchen table. Anti-anxiety medication, combined with antihistamine. In an elderly person, this combination causes significant confusion, memory problems, and disorientation. Take it regularly, and you'd appear to have moderate dementia within a week. My hand trembled as I reached for my coffee, genuine rage making me shakier than any drug could. My son, the cardiologist, is deliberately poisoning his father. Document everything, Jennifer advised. Every pill, every interaction. I've brought some equipment that will help. She produced a collection of small devices from her bag. Tiny cameras designed to look like smoke detector components, audio recorders that could hide in picture frames, motion sensors that would alert my phone to any unauthorized entry. Connecticut is a one-party consent state, she explained while showing me installation points. You can legally record any conversation you're part of. These will upload to a secure cloud server I maintain. Even if they find and destroy the devices, the evidence remains safe. We spent the morning installing the surveillance system. Jennifer worked with efficiency, born from decades of investigation, placing cameras to cover key areas while remaining invisible to casual observation. The study received special attention with 3 different angles covering the desk and filing cabinets. I've also hired someone to watch the house when you're away, she informed me. Former colleague, completely trustworthy. He'll notify us of any visits you don't know about. That afternoon, I drove to Stanford Hospital for the first of 3 psychiatric evaluations Harold had arranged. Dr. Amanda Chen was a renowned neuropsychiatrist with no connection to Marcus's social circle. Her office radiated warmth with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that encouraged openness. Mr. Henderson, Harold Whitman explained your situation. She began, her voice carrying professional concern. I want to assure you, this evaluation is completely confidential and thorough. I'll be testing memory, cognitive function, decision-making capacity, and general mental health. For 3 hours, I underwent comprehensive testing. Word recalls, mathematical problems, pattern recognition, current event questions, complex reasoning scenarios. Dr. Chen observed not just my answers, but how I arrived at them, my problem-solving methodology honed by decades of engineering. Your cognitive function is exceptional, she concluded, showing me the results. Your memory scores are in the 95th percentile for men your age. Problem-solving abilities remain at professional peak levels. There's absolutely no indication of dementia, confusion, or impaired judgment. Would you testify to that in court? Without hesitation. I'll prepare a detailed report. Anyone claiming you're incompetent is either mistaken or lying. I completed similar evaluations with Dr. Robert Sterling at Yale and Dr. Patricia Williams at Mount Sinai. Each reached identical conclusions, providing me with medical ammunition against whatever Dr. Brennan might claim. Meanwhile, my hidden cameras began capturing damning evidence. Marcus and Sarah visited while I was at Dr. Sterling's evaluation, using their key to enter what they believed was an empty house. The study camera recorded Sarah photographing additional financial documents while Marcus explored my bedroom. His pills are here, Marcus called out. Looks like he's been taking them. The bottle's half empty. I'd been flushing 1 pill each evening, maintaining the illusion of compliance while building evidence of their pharmaceutical assault. Good, Sarah replied. Dr. Brennan says another week of consistent dosing should produce observable symptoms. We need Mrs. Patterson and Tom Bradley to witness a few episodes. They spent an hour rehearsing scenarios, planning staged incidents where I would appear confused in front of neighbors. Their cold calculation chilled me more than winter wind off the sound. 3 days later, I was trimming roses in my front garden when Mrs. Patterson walked by with her poodle. Right on schedule, Marcus's BMW pulled into my driveway. Dad, he called out with theatrical concern. What are you doing with those garden shears? You were going to trim the roses yesterday. Remember, you already cut them. I looked at the roses, freshly cut and healthy. Playing my part, I frowned in manufactured confusion. I did. But they need trimming. Martha always said June was rose season. It's October, Dad. Marcus guided me toward the house while Mrs. Patterson watched with growing alarm. "Let's get you inside. You look tired." I caught Mrs. Patterson's eye, allowing distress to show on my face before shuffling inside. The camera hidden in my porch light captured the entire performance, including Marcus's satisfied smirk when he thought I wasn't looking. That evening, I called my nephew Tyler. At 16, he was a brilliant kid who'd inherited the family engineering gene. We'd been close before this nightmare began, bonding over robotics projects and coding challenges. "Uncle Brice." His voice brightened my mood immediately. "Mom said I couldn't call you anymore. Said you were sick." "Tyler, I need to tell you something important. Can you keep a secret from your parents temporarily?" A pause. "Is everything okay?" "No, but it will be. Your parents are trying to take my house because they need money. They want everyone to think I'm losing my mind, but I'm perfectly healthy. They might ask you to lie about me. I need you to know the truth." "They already did," Tyler admitted quietly. "Mom wrote out a statement about you forgetting my birthday and calling me by Dad's name. She wants me to sign it." "Did you?" "No way. You've never forgotten anything about me. You remembered my robotics competition when even Dad forgot. Uncle Brice, what's really happening?" I explained, simply focusing on facts rather than emotion. Tyler listened with the analytical mind I'd helped nurture. "That's fraud," he said finally. "And elder abuse. We studied it in social studies. It's a felony." "Yes, it is. I don't want you in the middle of this, but I wanted you to know I'm not sick. When this is over, we'll talk properly." "I could record them," Tyler offered. "When they talk about you. My phone has an app." "No," I said firmly. "Don't put yourself at risk. Just refuse to lie. That's enough." Over the next week, Jennifer helped me create a comprehensive defense. We discovered Marcus had been intercepting my mail-stealing correspondence from old colleagues and investment statements. Several friends had written concerned letters after not hearing from me, letters I'd never received. We documented everything meticulously. Jennifer created detailed timelines, cross-referenced evidence, built an airtight case of attempted guardianship fraud. She also discovered something unexpected in Sarah's background. 5 years ago in Chicago, Jennifer reported showing me court documents. Sarah was peripherally involved in another guardianship case. An elderly client of her previous firm was declared incompetent, his assets transferred to a guardian who happened to be Sarah's friend from law school. The guardian sold the man's property to a developer Sarah represented. The old man died 6 months later in a substandard facility. "She's done this before." "Attempted to. The FBI investigated, but couldn't prove conspiracy." Sarah left Chicago shortly after joined her current firm. But the pattern is clear. I hired actors through Jennifer's contacts, 2 convincing entrepreneurs, who visited my house posing as potential buyers while Marcus was present. He eagerly showed them around, discussing renovation possibilities and development potential, already spending money that wasn't his. The cameras captured him, promising a quick sale after Dad's situation is resolved, and offering to share his inside knowledge of the property's quirks for a finder's fee. His greed overwhelmed caution, providing me with evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Dr. Brennan made his move the following Tuesday. He appeared at my door, claiming to be conducting a wellness check at my son's request. I recognized him from photos Jennifer had obtained, a thin man with predatory eyes and an unctuous smile. "Mr. Henderson, your son is concerned about your well-being. Mind if I come in for a brief chat?" I let confusion cloud my features. "My son Marcus is here." "No, but he asked me to visit. I'm Dr. Brennan, a colleague of his." I welcomed him inside, shuffling slowly to the living room. For 30 minutes, I gave an Oscar-worthy performance of mild dementia. I called him by the wrong name, twice asked 3 times if he wanted coffee, and fumbled with the TV remote while trying to turn on a lamp. Dr. Brennan took copious notes, his satisfaction growing with each staged mistake. Hidden cameras recorded him asking leading questions, ignoring my correct answers while documenting every hesitation. He left with promises to help coordinate care and barely concealed triumph. The next morning, Jennifer provided the recording. We watched Dr. Brennan in my driveway calling Sarah immediately after leaving. Textbook, moderate dementia, he reported. Confusion, memory loops, executive function impairment. I'll have my report ready for the hearing. This will be straightforward. What he didn't know was that 15 minutes after he left, I'd driven to my investment advisor's office and executed several complex trades, all documented and witnessed. My dementia was as real as his medical ethics. Harold called that evening with expected news. They've filed, he said. Emergency guardianship petition citing immediate danger to your well-being and assets. Hearing is Monday morning, Judge Catherine Morrison presiding. Good, I replied, surprising him. Catherine Morrison is known for thoroughness. She'll want real evidence, not just testimony. You sound remarkably calm for a man facing potential guardianship. I looked at the wall of evidence. Jennifer and I had compiled the medical reports from 3 prestigious psychiatrists, the recordings of conspiracy and fraud, the proof of poisoning and mail theft. Harold, my wife, warned me about wolves. What she didn't mention is that I spent 40 years guiding spacecraft through asteroid fields. Navigating around predators is just another trajectory calculation. You have a plan. I have contingencies for contingencies. Schedule a family dinner for Sunday night. Tell Marcus and Sarah I want to discuss their concerns privately before any court proceedings. Mention I'm considering voluntary arrangements to avoid public embarrassment. You're going to cave. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. Trust me, Harold, and invite your wife. I'll need witnesses who can't be accused of bias. After ending the call, I sat in my study reviewing everything. The prescription bottles with their hidden poisons, the financial documents my son had photographed like a thief, the emails promising my home to strangers, the practiced lies designed to steal my freedom. Tomorrow would begin the final phase. The wheels Jennifer and I had set in motion would either deliver justice or crush me beneath their weight. But I wouldn't face it as a victim. I would face it as an engineer who'd solved one last problem, a father confronting the son who'd betrayed him, and a man honoring his late wife's wisdom about wolves in familiar clothing. The trap was set. Now I just had to spring it without becoming ensnared myself. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect New England autumn days that Martha used to call apple-picking weather. I stood at my bedroom window watching the sunrise paint the sound in shades of gold and crimson, knowing this might be my last peaceful morning for a while. By noon, the house buzzed with the energy of anticipated confrontation. I'd spent the morning preparing both practically and emotionally. Jennifer had installed backup recording devices, hidden my essential documents in a safety deposit box, and confirmed all our evidence was secure on multiple servers. At 2 p.m., Marcus and Sarah arrived together, unusual for a casual visit. They entered with the confident bearing of victors, approaching a surrender ceremony. Sarah carried a leather portfolio that undoubtedly contained legal documents. Marcus brought Dr. Brennan and 2 people I didn't recognize, a middle-aged couple who radiated the particular smugness of minor authority. Dad, Marcus began, his voice dripping with false concern. We need to have a serious discussion about your future. I noticed he didn't introduce me to the strangers. They arranged themselves in my living room like a tribunal, Sarah, and Marcus on the couch, the 3 others in chairs forming a semicircle. They left me the single chair facing them all, a deliberate power dynamic. Before we begin, Sarah announced, producing a digital recorder. We're documenting this conversation for your protection, Brice. Everyone state your names for the record. The strangers revealed themselves as George Hartman and Linda Foster, concerned friends, who would serve as witnesses. I recognized the names from Jennifer's research professional guardians, who made their living testifying in competency cases. Brice. Sarah continued, adopting her lawyer voice. We've gathered today because your family loves you and wants what's best for you. We've noticed significant changes in your behavior and cognitive function that require immediate intervention. She opened her portfolio, spreading documents across my coffee table with practiced efficiency. Photos of my confused gardening incident, the prescription bottles I'd supposedly been taking, statements from neighbors, Dr. Brennan's evaluation report. "The evidence is overwhelming," Marcus interjected, playing good cop to Sarah's prosecutor. "Dad, you've been forgetting things, getting confused, making dangerous decisions. Last week, you left the stove on all night. Yesterday, you tried to drive to Mom's grave at midnight." Both incidents were complete fabrications, but I saw how the witnesses nodded knowingly, already convinced by the narrative they'd been paid to support. Dr. Brennan cleared his throat authoritatively. "Mr. Henderson, my evaluation indicates moderate to severe cognitive decline, consistent with dementia. You're experiencing memory loops, executive dysfunction, and impaired judgment. Without immediate intervention, you're a danger to yourself." "What kind of intervention?" I asked, allowing a quaver in my voice. Sarah produced a document with multiple flags for signature lines. "We've prepared a comprehensive care plan. First, you'll sign power of attorney to Marcus for medical decisions, and to me for financial matters. This protects you from making harmful choices while confused. Second," Marcus continued, "we've found a wonderful assisted living facility, Shady Acres. They specialize in memory care. You'll have your own room activities, proper medication management. I'd researched Shady Acres extensively. 1-star ratings, complaints of neglect, understaffing that bordered on criminal. Residents' families reported unexplained injuries, missing belongings, and rapid decline after admission." "What about my house?" I asked. Sarah's mask slipped slightly, revealing hunger beneath concern. "The house is too much for you to maintain. We'll handle the sale, ensure you get fair market value. The proceeds will cover your care expenses for years. I've actually had interest from qualified buyers," Marcus added eagerly. "People who appreciate the property's potential. We could have it sold within weeks, minimize the stress of transition." George Hartman leaned forward. "Mr. Henderson, I've overseen dozens of these transitions. Families who resist create unnecessary trauma. Those who cooperate find peace and proper care. The court system is adversarial, public, embarrassing. Voluntary arrangements preserve dignity." "And if I refuse?" I asked. The room's atmosphere shifted, warmth evaporating like morning mist. Sarah's expression hardened into something predatory. "Then we proceed with formal incompetency proceedings," she stated flatly. "Dr. Brennan will testify to your diminished capacity. Your neighbors will describe concerning incidents. Tyler will confirm your confusion about family relationships." Tyler agreed to testify. My genuine surprise pleased them. "Tyler wants what's best for his grandfather." Marcus lied smoothly. "He's prepared a statement about your recent memory problems." Another fabrication. Tyler had texted me that morning, warning that his parents were pressuring him, but he wouldn't participate in their lies. "The court proceedings will be public." Sarah continued, each word calculated for impact. "Everyone will know Brice Henderson, respected engineer, can't remember his own name. Your former colleagues will pity you. The Yale Alumni Magazine will run a cautionary tale about recognizing dementia's warning signs. We don't want that for you." Marcus added false sympathy, oozing through his tone. "Sign the papers. Now avoid the humiliation. We'll handle everything discreetly. You'll be in Shady Acres by Monday, getting the help you need." Linda Foster spoke for the first time, her voice carrying practiced authority. "Mr. Henderson, I've seen families torn apart by these proceedings. Children forced to testify against parents, private medical details exposed in open court, reputations destroyed. Voluntary cooperation spares everyone that trauma. They were tag-teaming me, each playing their rehearsed role in this intervention theater. What they didn't know was that every word was being recorded from multiple angles, their conspiracy documented in high definition." "How long do I have to decide?" I asked, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. Sarah consulted her watch. "We need your signatures today. The buyer Marcus mentioned has a deadline. If we don't move quickly, the opportunity disappears. Today, I let shock color my voice. You want me to sign away my life in one afternoon? Dad, we've been planning this for months to protect you, Marcus said. Every day you delay is another day you might hurt yourself. What if you fall down the stairs? What if you forget your medications and have a cardiac event? We couldn't forgive ourselves if something happened while we waited. The irony of my cardiologist's son worrying about my heart while poisoning my mind would have been amusing if it weren't so tragic. I need time to process this, I said finally. It's overwhelming. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. They'd expected more resistance, perhaps hoping for an emotional outburst they could document as evidence of instability. 48 hours, Sarah conceded. We file Monday morning if you haven't signed. Once we file, this offer disappears. You'll face the full competency hearing, public testimony, court-appointed evaluation. The outcome will be the same, but the journey will be humiliating. I'll also need to update my report, Dr. Brennan added. Resistance to necessary care indicates further cognitive decline. The court takes that seriously. They gathered their documents, each movement choreographed to emphasize their control. As they prepared to leave, Marcus paused at the doorway, perhaps remembering he was supposed to be a loving son. Dad, I know this is hard, but Mom would want you safe. She'd want you cared for properly. Invoking Martha's memory to justify their betrayal was the final insult. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste copper, maintaining my facade of defeated confusion. After they left, I stood in my empty living room, fury and grief warring in my chest. The autumn light had shifted, casting long shadows across floors Martha had chosen 20 years ago. I'd built this home with my wife, raised our son here, thought I'd die peacefully within these walls. Now that son wanted to steal it all, wrap his greed in medical terminology and legal procedures. The little boy who'd clutched my hand during thunderstorms had become the storm itself, threatening to destroy everything I'd worked to create. I called Jennifer immediately. Did you get it all? Every word, multiple angles. Sarah's admission about planning this for months is particularly damning. The fake medical incidents, the pressure tactics, the threats of public humiliation, it's textbook elder abuse. What about Tyler? I reached out through secure channels. He's refused to sign anything and is documenting his parents' pressure. Brave kid. I spent the evening in my study surrounded by photos of better times. Marcus at Little League games, science fairs, graduation ceremonies. Sarah at their wedding, radiant in white, promising to love and cherish. Lies wrapped in smiles, betrayal hidden behind celebration. The phone rang at 9 p.m. Harold's number appeared on caller ID. Brice, I've arranged Sunday dinner as requested. Your dining room, 6 p.m. I've taken the liberty of inviting a few additional guests who might find the evening educational. Who? Trust me, you're not the only one who can plan strategically. Oh, and Catherine Morrison mentioned she's looking forward to Monday's hearing. Seems someone anonymously sent her information about Dr. Brennan's history of questionable testimony. She's very interested in examining his credentials thoroughly. After we hung up, I walked through my home one more time. Tomorrow would bring either vindication or disaster. Marcus and Sarah believed they'd cornered a confused old man, presented him with inevitable defeat. They saw my request for time as weakness, my slumped shoulders as surrender. They'd forgotten that I'd spent decades solving problems that seemed impossible, calculating trajectories through chaos, finding paths where none appeared to exist. Tomorrow, they'd learn that underestimating an aerospace engineer was as dangerous as miscalculating orbital mechanics. The wolves had shown their teeth, made their demands threaten their prey. What they hadn't realized was that sometimes the prey has been preparing its own hunt, waiting for the predators to overextend themselves in confidence. Sunday dinner would be served with a side of justice none of them had ordered, but all of them deserved. I fell asleep planning the menu, both culinary and karmic. Sunday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Indian summer gracing Connecticut, with one last golden day before winter's approach. I woke at dawn, energy coursing through my veins, like mission morning at NASA. Today's trajectory had been calculated down to the minute. All systems were go. By noon, my kitchen filled with familiar aromas. I'd decided to prepare Martha's complete Thanksgiving menu, her recipes written in fading ink on index cards she'd inherited from her mother. Turkey, with sage stuffing, sweet potato casserole topped with marshmallows, green beans with almonds, cranberry sauce made from scratch. If this was to be a family gathering about my future, I'd remind them of our past. Jennifer arrived at 2 p.m. with a van full of equipment. "The dining room is ready," she announced after an hour of subtle preparations. "Everything will be captured in perfect clarity. And our special guests." "Confirmed. They'll arrive precisely when needed." She paused, studying my calm demeanor. "You know Marcus and Sarah will fight back when they realize what's happening." "Let them. I've spent 3 years mourning Martha then, 3 weeks mourning the son I thought I'd raised. I'm done with grief. Tonight is about truth." At 4 p.m., while basting the turkey, I called Marcus. "Son, about tonight's dinner. I've been thinking about your mother's china, the Wedgwood set. Should I use it? Seems appropriate for a significant family occasion." "That's perfect, Dad," Marcus replied, his voice bright with anticipated victory. "Mom would appreciate the gesture. We'll be there at 6 sharp." "I've invited a few others," I mentioned casually. "Uncle Harold and Aunt Patricia, of course. Your mother always said important family decisions needed witnesses." A pause. "That's fine. The more support you have, the better. See you tonight, Dad." The first guests arrived at 5:30. Harold and Patricia Whitman entered with the bearing of people attending a significant event. Harold winked at me, while Patricia, elegant in her 70s, squeezed my hand warmly. "Brice, dear, the house smells wonderful. Like Martha's cooking." "Same recipes," I confirmed. "Seemed appropriate for a family gathering." My brother Robert arrived next, still imposing at 72, with the ramrod posture of his years on the federal bench. Brice, Harold briefed me. "This is unconscionable. That boy I taught to fish is trying to steal your life." "People change, Robert. Or maybe they just reveal who they always were." Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "They're here." Marcus and Sarah entered with the confidence of conquerors approaching tribute. They'd dressed formally, Marcus in his best suit, Sarah in a severe black dress that matched her intentions. Behind them came Tyler, looking uncomfortable in pressed khakis and a blazer. "Uncle Robert." Marcus's composure cracked slightly. "I didn't know you were coming." "Wouldn't miss a family gathering," Robert replied, his judge's eyes measuring his nephew. "Especially one concerning my brother's welfare." Sarah recovered first, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "How wonderful! Family support is crucial during transitions. Brice needs all the love he can get." The doorbell rang again. Jennifer answered, returning with a distinguished woman in her 60s, whom none of them recognized. "Everyone, this is Ms. Carol Brennan," I announced. "Dr. Philip Brennan's former wife. She's joining us for dinner." Sarah's face paled. Marcus looked confused. Carol smiled tightly. When Ms. Watson contacted me about Philip's latest victim, I felt compelled to attend. Someone should witness what my ex-husband has become. Before they could respond, Jennifer ushered in 2 more guests, a dignified couple in their 80s. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," I introduced. David Chen's parents. They were concerned about their son's involvement in certain property transactions. Sarah's carefully constructed composure began crumbling. These weren't the witnesses she'd expected for my surrender. "Shall we eat?" I suggested pleasantly. "Everything's getting cold." The dining room glowed under Martha's crystal chandelier. I'd set the table with her finest china sterling silver and Irish linen napkins. Place cards directed everyone to strategic seats. Marcus and Sarah found themselves flanked by judges and witnesses rather than supporters. I carved the turkey with steady hands, serving generous portions, while maintaining easy conversation about weather and football. Sarah pushed food around her plate. Marcus drank wine too quickly. Tyler watched everything with the sharp intelligence I'd always admired in him. After the main course, I stood raising my glass. Before dessert, I wanted to share something with my family. A presentation about legacy and truth. "Dad, this isn't necessary," Marcus began, but I continued. "Please indulge an old man." I pressed a remote, and a large screen descended from where Jennifer had installed it that afternoon. "I've been documenting our family history. Let me share what I've discovered." The first image appeared in the form of security footage from my study date, stamped 3 weeks ago, 2 a.m. Marcus and Sarah photographing my financial documents. "Family memories," I narrated calmly. A son and daughter-in-law so concerned about their father's welfare, they investigate his assets in secret. "Dad, we can explain," Marcus started. "Please, let me continue. The presentation has several chapters." The next clip showed Marcus on the phone, discussing my incompetency with Dr. Brennan. Then, Sarah practicing her concerned daughter-in-law speech. The pharmacy records for the prescription I'd never requested. Lab results showing the drugs designed to confuse me. "Brice." Sarah attempted her lawyer voice. "These recordings were made without consent." "Connecticut is a one-party consent state," Robert interjected. "As you well know, counselor. Please continue, Brice." The presentation progressed through their entire scheme. Emails about selling to David Chen. Marcus's gambling debts displayed in stark detail. Sarah's firm's malpractice suit, and her desperate need for money. The witnesses they'd paid. The facility where they planned to warehouse me. Carol Brennan spoke during a pause. "My husband has testified in 17 competency cases. Every single elderly person was declared incompetent. Every single one lost their assets within 6 months. 3 died within a year of institutionalization." Mrs. Chen added, "Our son called us last week excited about acquiring this property. He showed us correspondence from attorney Sarah Henderson, promising a quick, quiet sale. We were horrified to learn the circumstances." I clicked to the next slide. 3 separate psychiatric evaluations confirming my perfect cognitive health. "Interesting contrast to Dr. Brennan's findings," Harold observed. "Almost like someone had predetermined conclusions." The room had become a tribunal, but not the one Marcus and Sarah had planned. They sat frozen watching their conspiracy unravel in high definition. "Tyler," I said gently, "I know your parents asked you to lie about me. Would you like to share what really happened?" My nephew stood, his young face flushed but determined. "They wanted me to sign a statement saying Grandpa was confused forgetting things. Mom wrote it all out, complete lies. When I refused, Dad threatened to take away my college fund. I recorded the whole conversation on my phone." "You little—" Sarah began, then caught herself. "That's enough evidence, I think," I said, clicking off the presentation. "Now, let me tell you what happens next." I produced a manila folder from the sideboard. This contains the real estate documents for my house. As of Friday, I've sold it to the Westport Historical Preservation Society for $3.2 million. They'll maintain it as an example of mid-century architecture. Martha would have loved that. Marcus's face cycled through emotions before settling on rage. "You can't do that. We have power of attorney papers," which I haven't signed and never will. I pulled out another document. "This is a restraining order, effective tomorrow, preventing both of you from coming within 500 feet of me. This is a cease and desist order regarding any attempts at guardianship proceedings." Sarah found her voice. "You recorded us illegally. None of this is admissible." Robert laughed, a harsh sound in the elegant room. "Admissible where this isn't a trial. Yet. Though the elder abuse charges Brice is filing tomorrow will certainly lead to one." "Elder abuse," Marcus sputtered. "I'm his son." "Who tried to poison him?" Jennifer spoke from the doorway. "I've submitted the lab reports to the police. Administering prescription drugs to someone without their knowledge is assault. When done to steal their assets, it becomes felony elder abuse. And the Connecticut Bar will be very interested in your activities," Harold added, looking at Sarah. Conspiracy to defraud, abuse of legal process, ethics violations that boggle the mind. Your career is over. As is yours. A new voice added from the doorway. Dr. James Patterson, Chief of Staff at Stanford Hospital, entered with grim authority. Marcus, the board met in emergency session this afternoon. Your privileges are suspended pending investigation. Attempting to poison your father while using hospital connections for fraudulent medical evaluations. Your medical license is forfeit. The room erupted. Sarah threatened lawsuits. Marcus pleaded about his debts, his desperation, how unfair life had been. Their words blended into white noise as I focused on Tyler, who looked stunned by his parents' complete unraveling. "Enough," Robert commanded in his courtroom voice. Silence fell. Marcus and Sarah Henderson, you have two choices. Leave now quietly and face only the professional consequences of your actions, or continue this spectacle and face criminal prosecution. Decide. Sarah grabbed her purse, her face twisted with fury. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "You two are no longer welcome in my life. Tyler, you always have a place here, but your parents are strangers to me now." Marcus looked at me one last time, perhaps searching for the father who'd always forgiven his mistakes. He found only a man who'd learned that some betrayals cut too deep for reconciliation. They left in bitter silence, their dreams of easy money evaporating like morning mist. The room exhaled collectively once they'd gone. "Tyler," I said gently, "I'm sorry you had to see that." My nephew's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "They were really going to put you in that horrible place just for money." "Greed changes people," Robert said, putting his arm around Tyler. "Or reveals who they really are. Your grandfather just taught them an expensive lesson about underestimating their elders." Carol Brennan rose to leave. "Mr. Henderson, thank you for stopping my ex-husband's latest victim. I've contacted the other families he's destroyed. Class action lawsuit forthcoming." The Chens departed next, after extracting a promise that I'd visit to share engineering stories with their grandson. As Jennifer supervised equipment removal, Harold poured brandy from my decanter. "Masterfully done, Brice. Though I'm curious about one thing. When did you really sell the house?" I smiled, thinking of Martha's love for this place. "Friday, just as I said. But not to the Historical Society. I sold it to myself, transferring ownership to an irrevocable trust. Tyler's the beneficiary when he turns 25. The house stays in the family, just not the family members who tried to steal it." Robert raised his glass. "To Martha, who warned you about wolves." "To Martha," I echoed. "Who knew sometimes the pack includes your own pups?" Later, after everyone had gone except Tyler, who'd asked to stay the night, I found myself in the kitchen, washing Martha's china. Each plate held memories of happier gatherings when trust flowed as freely as wine. Tyler appeared in the doorway. "Grandpa." "What happens now?" I dried my hands, considering my answer. "Now I live my life on my terms. Travel maybe. Definitely keep swimming. Spend time with people who value me for more than my assets. And you? I don't know. My parents? I can't go home to that. Robert and Patricia have offered to let you stay with them for now. We'll figure out the rest together. Family isn't just blood, Tyler. It's the people who stand by you when the wolves circle." He nodded, wise beyond his 16 years. "Grandma would be proud of how you handled this." I thought about Martha's final warning, how she'd seen what I'd been too trusting to recognize. She always was the smart one. I just finally learned to listen. The kitchen clock chimed midnight, officially ending the most dramatic Sunday dinner of my life. Tomorrow would bring consequences for Marcus, and Sarah freedom for me, and new beginnings for Tyler. Tonight, though, I was simply a man who'd protected himself from predators, who happened to share his DNA. The wolves had been fed all right, just not the meal they'd ordered. Monday morning arrived with thunderclouds matching the storm about to break over Marcus and Sarah's carefully constructed lives. I sat in my breakfast nook, watching rain-streaked windows, while Tyler scrambled eggs with the concentration of someone avoiding thinking about larger problems. Your phone's been buzzing, he said, gesturing to my cell on the counter. 23 missed calls. 15 from Marcus, 8 from Sarah. I deleted the voicemails unheard and blocked both numbers. The time for conversation had passed. At 9 a.m., Sharp Harold called. Judge Morrison wants to see you in chambers at 10. Apparently, Marcus and Sarah showed up at the courthouse demanding an emergency hearing. She's not pleased about the attempted ambush. They're still trying. Desperation makes people stupid. Bring your documentation. Jennifer's already there with the video evidence. Tyler insisted on accompanying me. I'm part of this, Grandpa. They used me as a weapon. I want to see it through. Judge Catherine Morrison's chambers reflected their occupant in its no-nonsense elegance and intellectual gravity. Law books lined walls like armor against ignorance. The judge herself, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, commanded respect without demanding it. Marcus and Sarah sat rigid in chairs before her desk, looking like students called before the principal. Their expensive clothes couldn't hide the desperation radiating from their postures. Mr. Henderson, Judge Morrison greeted me. Thank you for coming. Your son and daughter-in-law have made serious allegations about your mental capacity. They've also filed emergency motions claiming you're being manipulated by undue influence. Your Honor, Sarah began, but the judge raised a silencing hand. Mrs. Henderson, you'll have your opportunity to speak. First, I want to review the evidence Mr. Whitman and Ms. Watson have provided. For the next hour, we methodically presented our case. The secret recordings played on a court laptop, Marcus and Sarah's conspiracy echoing in the formal chamber. Their faces progressed from indignation to defeat as their own words condemned them. Judge Morrison's expression darkened with each revelation. When the video showed Marcus discussing the poisoning plan, she actually recoiled. Dr. Henderson, she said coldly, you administered prescription medications to your father without his knowledge. It was for his own good, Marcus stammered. He needed help accepting care. By chemically inducing the symptoms you then used as evidence of incompetence. The judge's voice could have frozen flame. That's not just medical malpractice, doctor. That's assault. Sarah tried damage control. Your Honor, taken out of context, these recordings paint an unfair picture. We were concerned about Brice's welfare. Concerned enough to promise his house to a buyer before obtaining any legal authority to sell it. Judge Morrison pulled out a document. I have here correspondence between you and David Chen, dated 2 weeks ago, discussing renovation plans for a property you didn't own. I produced my psychiatric evaluations. 3 independent specialists confirm I'm completely competent, Your Honor. The only doctor who found otherwise was Dr. Brennan, who has a troubling history of always supporting guardianship petitions. About Dr. Brennan, the judge said. He's been unable to appear today. Apparently, the FBI arrested him this morning on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud across multiple guardianship cases. Your situation, Mr. Henderson, triggered a broader investigation. Marcus slumped in his chair. Sarah's lawyer facade finally cracked completely. Your Honor, I said quietly. My son and daughter-in-law saw me not as family to protect, but as an asset to liquidate. They convinced neighbors I was declining plan to warehouse me in a substandard facility and would have succeeded if I hadn't discovered their scheme. I'm here to ensure this ends today. Judge Morrison turned to Marcus and Sarah. I've seen financial exploitation of the elderly before, but rarely with such calculated cruelty from direct family members. Your actions are reprehensible. We have debts, Marcus blurted out. Gambling debts to dangerous people. Sarah's firm is failing. We didn't have choices. You had every choice, the judge replied. You chose conspiracy over conversation theft, over honest request for help. You chose to poison your father, rather than face your own failures. She pulled out official forms. I'm dismissing all guardianship petitions with prejudice. Any future attempts will be met with contempt charges. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Criminal prosecution! Sarah's voice cracked. Elder abuse fraud, conspiracy assault with prescription drugs. And that's just the start. Judge Morrison's tone held no sympathy. You're both attorneys in your way, doctor, and lawyer. You knew exactly what you were doing. The judge turned to me with markedly warmer regard. Mr. Henderson, I apologize that you even had to defend your competence. The court recognizes your complete capacity and condemns the actions taken against you. As we prepared to leave, Tyler stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm their son. They tried to make me lie about my grandfather. I wanted on record that everything they claimed about his mental state was fabricated. Grandpa's the sharpest person I know. Judge Morrison smiled, the first warmth she'd shown. Noted for the record, young man. Your grandfather is fortunate to have you in his corner. Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to weak sunshine. Marcus and Sarah exited through another door, avoiding us. I caught a glimpse of them arguing by their cars before they drove away in opposite directions. Their united front had crumbled along with their plans. Harold clapped my shoulder. That went better than expected. Morrison's referral to the DA means serious charges are coming. I don't want them in prison, I said. I just want them out of my life. That ship has sailed, Brice. The state prosecutes elder abuse regardless of the victim's wishes. They made their choices. That afternoon, Jennifer called with updates falling like dominoes. Sarah's law firm had fired her immediately upon learning of the morning's hearing. The Connecticut Bar Association opened an ethics investigation. Marcus's hospital confirmed his termination and medical license suspension. The gambling syndicate he owed had been contacted by federal authorities, removing that threat through legal pressure. By evening, word had spread through Westport's tight-knit community. Neighbors who'd been manipulated into providing statements called with apologies. Mrs. Patterson brought a casserole and tearful regrets. I should have known better, she said. 60 years as your neighbor and I, let that woman convince me you were declining. You were pruning roses for heaven's sake, not exhibiting dementia. Tom Bradley appeared next, shamefaced, and bearing a bottle of aged scotch. Brice, I'm mortified. When your boy asked about missed poker games, I thought I was helping. Didn't realize they were building a case. I accepted their apologies with grace Martha would have approved of. These people hadn't acted from malice, but from misguided concern, manipulated by experts in deception. Tyler spent the day with Robert and Patricia, who'd begun proceedings to become his temporary guardians. When he returned that evening, he seemed older, weighted by his parents' betrayal, but not broken by it. Mom called Uncle Robert 18 times, he reported. Dad sent 100 texts. They want me to speak on their behalf at sentencing. What do you want to do? He considered carefully my engineering grandson, analyzing the problem. They're my parents. I love them. But they tried to destroy you for money. How do I reconcile that? You don't, I said honestly. You accept that people are complicated, that good parents can do evil things when greed takes hold. You love who they were while protecting yourself from who they've become. We ordered pizza and mundane dinner after yesterday's dramatic feast. While we ate, Tyler asked questions about the scheme, trying to understand how his parents had rationalized their actions. Dad mentioned the gambling debts in court, he said. How bad were they? $400,000 to people who don't accept bankruptcy as payment. Your father got in deep, then deeper, trying to win back losses. Classic gambler's spiral. And Mom's firm, $30 million malpractice judgment. Partners personally liable for $10 million. Sarah needed $2 million to maintain her partnership, or lose everything she'd worked toward. Tyler pushed pizza around his plate. So they decided your house was the solution. The easy solution. The hard solution would have been admitting their failures, asking for help, facing consequences. They chose theft over honesty. Would you have helped them if they just asked? I thought about it. With conditions. Therapy for your father's gambling addiction. Financial counseling for both. Partial help contingent on them making real changes. But we'll never know, because they chose deception instead. Around 9 p.m., an unexpected visitor arrived. David Chen himself, the tech billionaire Sarah had promised my house to stood at my door with an embarrassed expression. "Mr. Henderson, I owe you an apology. I had no idea the house wasn't legitimately for sale. Sarah presented herself as your legal representative. When I learned the truth this morning, I was appalled." I invited him in curious about the man who'd nearly bought my stolen home. He proved surprisingly humble for a billionaire genuinely distressed by his unwitting role in the conspiracy. "I've withdrawn all interest in the property," he assured me. "I've also terminated any business relationship with Sarah's firm. What they attempted was unconscionable." We talked for an hour about technology and aerospace engineering. Despite the circumstances of our meeting, I found myself liking him. When he left, he handed me a business card. "If you ever do decide to sell legitimately, please call. And if your grandson there has any interest in computer science, I run internship programs." Tyler's eyes lit up the first genuine excitement I'd seen since yesterday's revelations. As midnight approached, I stood in my study where this nightmare had begun. The furniture remained unchanged, but everything felt different. Trust, once shattered, left sharp edges everywhere. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then recognized Robert's emergency contact. "Brice, it's Marcus. They won't let me call. I'm at the hospital parking garage. Please, I need 5 minutes. No lawyers, no recording. Just father and son." Tyler read over my shoulder. "It's a trap." Maybe. Or maybe it's a broken man realizing what he's lost. I grabbed my keys. "Stay here. I'll be back within an hour." The hospital parking garage at midnight felt like a scene from a noir film. Marcus waited on the 3rd level, silhouetted against city lights. He looked diminished, his doctor's confidence replaced by something hollow. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't think you would." "5 minutes, Marcus. Say what you need to say." He leaned against concrete, struggling for words. "I don't remember when it started. The gambling. First it was poker with colleagues, then private games, then, suddenly, I owed more than I could ever repay. They threatened Sarah, threatened Tyler. I was desperate. So you decided to sacrifice me instead. It wasn't supposed to be real." The words exploded from him. "We'd get power of attorney, borrow against the house, pay the debts, then return everything. You'd never know. But Sarah saw bigger opportunities, and I was too deep to stop it." "You poisoned me, Marcus. Medically, deliberately, your own father." He crumbled, then tears flowing freely. "I know. God, I know. Every pill I prescribed, I died a little inside. But they said they'd hurt Tyler if I didn't pay. What kind of father chooses his parent over his child? The kind who finds legal solutions instead of criminal ones. The kind who admits his failures and asks for help. The kind you used to be before greed consumed you. Can you ever forgive me? I studied my son, seeing echoes of the boy who'd once trusted me to check for monsters. Forgiveness isn't mine to give, Marcus. It's yours to earn, through genuine change, accountability, and acceptance of consequences. The man I raised would understand that. I've lost everything. My license, my family, my future. You lost those things the moment you chose conspiracy over honesty. But you're alive, and where there's life, there's the possibility of redemption. Just not from me. Not now. Maybe not ever. I left him there, crying in a parking garage, facing the ruins of his choices. As I drove home, I felt neither satisfaction nor regret. Just empty space where trust once lived. Tyler waited anxiously. What did he want? Absolution I couldn't give. Understanding I couldn't offer. He wanted his father to make it all go away, forgetting he'd tried to make his father disappear first. We sat together in the living room processing the day's revelations. The criminal charges would proceed. Sarah and Marcus would likely serve time. Their professional lives were over, their reputations destroyed. But Tyler would survive, supported by family who actually cared for his well-being. And I would continue scarred, but not broken, betrayed, but not bitter. "Grandpa," Tyler asked eventually, "what happens at tomorrow's family dinner?" I smiled, thinking of the empty chairs that would never be filled again. "We start new traditions. Smaller gatherings, perhaps, but with people who value family over finance." The clock chimed 1 a.m., officially beginning Tuesday. Somewhere in the city, Marcus and Sarah faced their first night understanding the cost of their choices. In my home, Tyler and I faced hours about choosing to move forward without them. The revelations were complete, the consequences still unfolding. But the wolves had been banished, and those who remained could finally rest safely. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of a sailboat, watching Caribbean sunrise paint the waves gold. The yacht club had always been a dream, deferred, something Martha and I promised ourselves someday. After everything I'd decided, someday shouldn't wait for anyone's permission. "Grandpa, you're up early." Tyler emerged from below deck, already comfortable with nautical life after our month of island hopping. "Old habits." I replied, though truthfully, sleeping past dawn felt like wasting miracles. Every morning I woke in my own bed on my own terms was a gift Marcus and Sarah had tried to steal. My phone buzzed with a notification from Jennifer Watson, now Director of Investigations for the Henderson Foundation for Elder Protection. We'd incorporated 3 months ago using a portion of my assets to help seniors facing similar exploitation. Jennifer's message was brief, but satisfying. Another family reunited. Guardianship reversed. That makes 37 victories. 37 elderly people saved from predatory relatives. 37 wolves revealed before they could complete their hunts. Martha would have been proud. Tyler prepared breakfast, while I reviewed the latest legal updates. Marcus had pled guilty to elder abuse and fraud charges, receiving 2 years in minimum security. The gambling syndicate, under federal pressure, had agreed to forgive his debts in exchange for his testimony about their operations. He'd entered treatment for gambling addiction, writing me weekly letters I read but didn't answer. Sarah had fought harder, her legal training making her dangerous, even in defeat. But the evidence was overwhelming. Disbarred and convicted, she served 18 months in a women's facility. The divorce papers were filed from prison, each party blaming the other for their downfall. Her firm's malpractice settlement bankrupted her completely. "Any word from Dad?" Tyler asked, his voice carefully neutral. He'd taken to calling them by their first names or parental titles, unable to reconcile Mom and Dad with what they'd done. The usual letter. Therapy updates, apology iterations, requests for forgiveness I'm not ready to grant. "Do you think you ever will be ready, I mean?" I considered while watching frigate birds dive for breakfast. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Tyler. It's a process. I've forgiven the desperate man who made terrible choices. I haven't forgiven the son who looked me in the eye while poisoning my coffee. Those might be the same person, but my heart sees them differently. Tyler had thrived despite the trauma. Living with Robert and Patricia during the school year, sailing with me during breaks, he'd maintained straight A's while processing his parents' betrayal through therapy and the simple medicine of time. Yale had already expressed interest in their engineering program. "Sometimes I dream they're normal," he admitted. "That Mom's making breakfast, and Dad's reading medical journals, and none of this happened. Then I wake up and feel guilty for wanting them back." That's love, not guilt. You can love who they were while protecting yourself from who they became. The two aren't mutually exclusive. We sailed into Charlotte Amelie's harbor as the day warmed. St. Thomas had become our base between explorations, far enough from Connecticut's memories, but close enough for quick returns when needed. The Bergen Foundation required occasional in-person attention, though Jennifer handled daily operations brilliantly. At the marina, a familiar face waited on the dock. Dr. Amanda Chen, the psychiatrist, who'd first confirmed my competence, waved as we approached. "Amanda," Tyler called out, "you made it?" She'd become an unexpected friend through the foundation, offering pro bono evaluations for seniors facing guardianship challenges. Her visit combined professional consultation with personal pleasure, a balance I'd learned to appreciate. "Brice, you look 10 years younger," she observed after hugs were exchanged. "Sea life agrees with you." "Freedom agrees with me," I corrected. "The sea's just a beautiful bonus." We spent the morning touring the island, showing Amanda our favorite spots. Over lunch at a mountainside restaurant, she updated us on the Foundation's impact. The Connecticut legislature is considering mandatory oversight for guardianship proceedings inspired by your case. They're calling it Martha's Law. My throat tightened. Martha's Law. My wife's final warning transformed into protection for others. She would have loved that, I managed. Always looking out for the vulnerable. That evening, we attended a beach barbecue hosted by the sailing community. Expatriates and locals mingled over grilled mahi and rum punch, sharing stories of wind and waves. Nobody knew our history, our pain, our legal victories. We were just Brice and Tyler, grandfather and grandson crew on the 40-foot sloop, Second Chances. "You know what I miss," Tyler said suddenly as we watched sunset paint the sky purple. "Game night. Remember you. Grandma, Mom, and Dad playing Monopoly until midnight. I remember your father always insisted on being the banker. Because he kept stealing from the bank." Tyler laughed, then sobered. "I guess that should have been a warning sign. Or just a son who played to win." Not every childhood moment was prophecy, Tyler. They were real people who made real choices. Don't let their endings poison all the beginnings. My phone rang, Harold's name appearing. In 6 months, he'd called only for emergencies. "Brice, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening. Sarah's been hurt in prison. Apparently she testified against the wrong person. She's in the hospital asking for you." The old me might have rushed back, driven by duty or guilt. The new me understood boundaries. "Is she dying?" "No, but seriously injured. Broken ribs, punctured lung. She'll recover." "Then she doesn't need me. She needs medical care she'll receive and legal protection she forfeited. Tell her I wish her healing, but not my presence." "Understood. I'll convey the message." Tyler watched me end the call. "Sarah. Injured, not critical. Requesting my presence, which I declined." "Do you feel guilty?" "I feel sad. Sad that someone I once called daughter reduced our relationship to transactions. Sad that she's suffering consequences of choices I warned against. But guilt, guilt, requires responsibility I don't carry for her decisions." Amanda observed our interaction with professional interest. "You've both done remarkable psychological work. Many families never recover from betrayal trauma." "We had help," I acknowledged. "Good therapy, true family support, and the gift of distance. Plus, we chose recovery over revenge." "But you did get revenge," Tyler pointed out. "They lost everything." "They faced consequences," I corrected. "Revenge would have been pursuing their destruction. I simply refused to be destroyed myself. The difference matters." Later that night, after Amanda had returned to her hotel, and Tyler was reading below deck, I sat alone with stars and thoughts. My phone held 43 unread letters from Marcus, each seeking connection I wasn't ready to provide. Maybe someday. Maybe never. The choice remained mine, which was all I'd fought to protect. A message from Jennifer arrived with the week's summary. The Foundation had helped 3 more families this week, prevented 2 fraudulent guardianships, and recovered nearly $1 million in stolen assets. We'd hired 2 more investigators and a social worker, expanding our reach beyond Connecticut. The final paragraph made me smile. Local news wants to do a feature on the Foundation. From victim to victor. How one man's fight became a movement. Interested? I typed back, only if they focus on the Foundation's work, not my story. This isn't about vindication anymore. It's about protection. Tyler appeared with hot chocolate, a nighttime tradition we'd started. Can't sleep. Just thinking. Your parents' sentencing hearings are next month. Do you want to attend? He'd wrestled with this decision for weeks. I think I need to. Not for them, but for me. To see it finished. Will you come? If you need me, I'll be there. I need you here more, he said after consideration. On the boat, living freely, showing me that betrayal doesn't define us. Uncle Robert can take me to court. You keep sailing, Grandpa. Keep being proof that wolves don't always win. We sat together watching phosphorescence dance in our wake. Somewhere in Connecticut, Marcus sat in a cell contemplating choices. Sarah lay in a hospital bed, facing her own consequences. Their victims, the ones they'd succeeded in imprisoning before me, remained trapped in substandard facilities. But here now, Tyler and I sailed free waters. The foundation would help spring others from similar traps. Martha's Law might prevent future predations. My story, painful as it was, had become bigger than personal vindication. You know what Grandma would say about all this? Tyler asked suddenly. Tell me. She'd say the wolves came hunting, but forgot one thing: engineers don't just solve problems. They build solutions. And you built something that'll protect people long after we're gone. I pulled my grandson close, this remarkable young man, who'd emerged from betrayal with wisdom instead of bitterness. She'd also say, "It's past your bedtime." I'm 17. And I'm 69. We both need sleep for tomorrow's sail to St. John. As we prepared for bed, my phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number, but the message was clear. Mr. Henderson, you don't know me, but your foundation saved my mother today. Blessings to you. Another wolf turned away. Another elder protected. Another family saved from the unique agony of betrayal by blood. I fell asleep to the boat's gentle rocking, dreaming not of the past, but the future. Tyler, at Yale. The foundation expanding nationally. Sailing to new islands with Amanda, perhaps joining more frequently. A life rebuilt on my terms with chosen family and purposeful work. The wolves had come just as Martha warned. They'd worn familiar faces and spoken loving words while planning my destruction. But I'd survived their hunt, exposed their nature, and built something beautiful from the wreckage of trust. Most importantly, I'd learned the final lesson Martha couldn't teach because she'd never faced it. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating the wolves. It's refusing to become one yourself, even when betrayal makes their hunger understandable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh victories for the foundation, another day of freedom Marcus and Sarah had tried to steal. But tonight, I slept peacefully on waters they'd never sail wealthy, in ways they'd never understand, surrounded by love they'd traded for avarice. The boy who'd once checked for monsters under beds had become one himself. But the man who'd taught him to use a flashlight had learned to illuminate darker truths. And in that light, no wolf could hunt unseen again. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to triumph. If you've experienced similar family exploitation or know someone who has, please share this story. Comment below with your thoughts on protecting our elderly loved ones from financial predation. Like this video if it touched your heart, and subscribe to hear more stories of justice prevailing over greed. Together, we can ensure no wolf hunts in shadow, and no elder faces guardianship fraud alone. Until next time, keep watching for the wolves. They sometimes wear the faces we trust most, but they always reveal themselves to those who pay attention.